You know, there's a global conflict happening right now. But it's not being fought with tanks or jets. Nope. It's being fought with something way more insidious, meticulously crafted lines of code.
So, I want you to forget everything you think of when you hear the word war. This is a silent, invisible battle. It's being waged 24/7 across the entire planet, and honestly, it's escalating every single day.
The arsenals in this war, they're not filled with bullets and bombs. We're talking vast libraries of malware, exploits, and scripts, all designed to sneak into the systems that run our world, to steal our data, and to seize control.
And the front lines of this thing are, well, they're everywhere. They're in the cloud services your company uses, the software on your laptop, and yeah, even the apps on your phone. To really get a handle on how this is all happening, we've got to look at it as a war being fought on 4 very different fronts.
Okay, so our first front is the software supply chain. Now, just think about that name for a second. Attackers aren't trying to just kick down the front door anymore. Oh no. They're going upstream to poison the well. They're targeting the fundamental code libraries that developers use to build the software we all use.
A perfect and frankly a terrifying example of this is a campaign that researchers have codenamed Shai-Hulud. This was a massive, and I mean massive, attack on NPM. Now, for anyone who isn't a developer, think of NPM as a giant public library for code. It's an absolutely essential resource. So this attack on the world's biggest software registry was on a scale we have just never seen before. This wasn't some minor breach. It was a systemic compromise of trust at the very foundation of how software gets made.
And what's truly alarming here is just the sheer scope. We are talking about hundreds and hundreds of compromised code packages. And look, these aren't just obscure tools nobody's ever heard of. You can see right there, a package from CrowdStrike, a major cybersecurity company, was hit. That just drives the point home. When the supply chain itself is the target, nobody is immune. Even the people who are supposed to protect us can be compromised.
So how did this malware actually work? Well, it was ruthlessly efficient, and it had a dual purpose. The second it got active, it started hunting for treasure. It used a tool called TruffleHog to scan absolutely everything for digital secrets. We're talking GitHub tokens, AWS cloud keys, literally the keys to the kingdom. But it didn't stop there, and this is crucial. It also installed a hidden backdoor, a GitHub workflow file, making sure the attackers had persistent long-term access even if that initial infection was found and cleaned up.
All right, let's move on to our second front. This is where we go from these automated code attacks to something, well, far more intimate: human espionage. The target here isn't the firewall, it's the person sitting behind the keyboard.
And this brings us to a threat group security researchers are calling subtle Snail, which has been linked back to Iran. Their focus is highly strategic. They're going after critical European sectors: telecommunications, aerospace, and defense. So these aren't your random smash-and-grab attacks. They are patient, targeted intelligence operations aimed at stealing state and corporate secrets.
And their method is chillingly effective because it exploits basic human trust. It all starts with simple recon on a platform like LinkedIn, where they find developers or system admins with the kind of access they want. Then comes the lure. A fake, but very convincing, very tailored job offer from a so-called HR rep. They draw the victim to a fake job portal, get them to type in their credentials, and just like that, they're inside the network. And from there, they deploy their own custom espionage tool, a backdoor they call Mini Bike, giving them complete control.
And this right here is what makes the threat so personal. This isn't just about stealing project plans or source code. As this report points out, the attackers are taking deeply private information: passport scans, visa data, personal IDs, even family photos. They are building a complete intelligence file on the person, not just the employee. And that data can then be used for blackmail, for future impersonation, or even to track their movements.
So far we've seen attacks that target our code and attacks that target our people. But what happens when the very companies that build our digital world allegedly leave the doors unlocked? This third front isn't about some sophisticated foreign adversary. It's about corporate negligence.
And this issue has gone all the way up to the highest levels of government. What we're looking at here is an official letter from U.S. Senator Ron Wyden to the Federal Trade Commission, and the language is completely unambiguous. He is accusing Microsoft of, and I'm quoting here, gross cybersecurity negligence.
So what's at the heart of this really serious accusation? It's a specific hacking technique called Kerberoasting, which is basically a clever way for attackers to steal user passwords from inside a network. And look, this is not some new fancy zero-day exploit. It's a well-known technique that was used in a devastating ransomware attack against Ascension, one of the largest nonprofit healthcare systems in the US. It forced them to divert ambulances and it disrupted patient care for weeks.
So here's the crucial point. Why does Kerberoasting still work so well? According to Senator Wyden, it's because Windows, by default, still supports an ancient and provably insecure encryption standard from the 1980s called RC4. As you can see, the secure, modern alternative, AES, is the US government standard. It's strong, and it's recommended by every security organization on the planet. And yet Microsoft doesn't require it by default, leaving this massive, decades-old security hole that attackers can, and do, drive a truck right through.
And Senator Wyden's conclusion in this letter is just absolutely scathing. He writes that Microsoft is profiting from this exact insecurity by then turning around and selling advanced security services to the same customers left vulnerable by its own products. It's a powerful, direct accusation of a fundamental conflict of interest right at the heart of the world's biggest software company.
And all of this brings us to our final front, the future. Because the same patterns of risk we've just seen, in our code, in our people, and in our corporate policies, are now popping up at an incredible new scale in the world of artificial intelligence.
And this isn't just speculation. The Open Web Application Security Project, OWASP, has already identified the top security risks for large language models. And you can see some familiar threats, like supply chain vulnerabilities. That's the exact same issue we saw with the Shai-Hulud campaign. But there are also new risks unique to AI, like prompt injection, which is basically tricking an AI into doing things it shouldn't, and excessive agency, which is the very real danger of giving an AI too much power to act on its own without a human in the loop.
And these abstract risks become a lot more critical when you see the very real arms race for AI talent that's happening right now. Here's a quote from Dustin Tran, a key researcher on Google's Gemini project, explaining why he left for Elon Musk's xAI. He didn't move for a better algorithm, he moved for better infrastructure, what he calls unparalleled computational and data advantages.
And that really gets to the heart of the matter. The competition in AI today is a battle for massive computing power and just unimaginable amounts of data. As these models become exponentially more powerful and get integrated into everything from our power grids to our healthcare, the potential impact of those security risks we just saw on the OWASP list, it grows right along with them.
So, where does all this leave us? Well, we're in the middle of a complex, invisible war. It's being fought on multiple fronts at the same time, and the stakes for our digital future could not be higher.
We've seen how this war plays out, right? From attacks on the very code that builds our digital world to sophisticated espionage targeting us as individuals. We've seen how big corporate decisions can leave us all vulnerable, and how these same patterns of risk are now scaling up in this new arms race for AI supremacy.
All of this really just leads to one critical question. In an invisible war that's fought on so many fronts, with threats coming from malicious actors, corporate decisions, and new technologies, who is ultimately responsible for your security? Is it the developer, the corporation, the government, or is it you?